They want you to think it's theoretical. They want you to believe it's still years away. They want you to dismiss it as another tech headline that will fade into irrelevance. They are catastrophically wrong. While the financial world obsesses over Federal Reserve policy and geopolitical tensions, while precious metals traders stare at charts and technical indicators, a South Korean technology giant just confirmed something that will fundamentally break the global silver market. On December 12th, 2025, as silver hovers around $62 per ounce at multi-decade highs, Samsung SDI is quietly ramping up production lines that will consume more silver than anyone has properly calculated. This isn't speculation. This isn't a prototype sitting in a research lab. This is mass production scheduled for 2027, and the silver market has no idea what's about to hit it. Samsung's solid-state battery technology just crossed the threshold from laboratory curiosity to commercial reality, and the amount of silver required to make this technology work at scale will obliterate every supply-demand model that Wall Street analysts are currently using. This is the story of how one battery innovation could trigger the greatest silver squeeze in modern commodity history, and why the current price of $62 per ounce will look absurdly cheap within 24 months. The silver carbon revolution that changes everything. Let's start with what makes Samsung's technology different, revolutionary, and absolutely terrifying for silver supply chains. Traditional lithium-ion batteries, the ones currently powering every electric vehicle on Earth, use liquid electrolytes. They're good enough. They work. They get the job done. But they're also dangerous, prone to thermal runaway, and fundamentally limited in energy density. Samsung's all-solid-state battery technology eliminates the liquid electrolyte entirely. Instead, it uses an oxide-based solid electrolyte that cannot catch fire, cannot explode, cannot fail catastrophically. But here is where it gets interesting. Here is where the silver story begins. To make this solid-state technology actually work, to achieve the energy density that makes it commercially viable, Samsung's researchers discovered they needed something special in the anode, something that would prevent dendrite formation, something that would enable higher capacity and longer cycle life. That something is silver. Specifically, a silver-carbon nanocomposite layer integrated directly into the anode architecture. This isn't a minor component. This isn't an optional enhancement. The silver-carbon layer is what enables the entire technology to function. It is what allows Samsung to achieve 500 watt-hours per kilogram energy density, nearly double that of current mainstream electric vehicle batteries. It's what enables 9-minute charging from 8% to 80%. It's what delivers 600 miles of range on a single charge. It's what provides a 20-year lifespan that will fundamentally change the economics of electric vehicle ownership. Without silver, none of this works. The battery doesn't function. The technology doesn't exist. And here is the number that should terrify every silver investor, every automotive executive, every government energy planner on Earth. Each battery cell requires approximately 5 grams of silver. A typical 100 kilowatt-hour battery pack, the kind that powers a long-range electric vehicle, requires about 1 kilogram of silver per vehicle, 1,000 grams, 32 troy ounces per car. Let that sink in for a moment. Traditional electric vehicles today use 25 to 50 grams of silver for electrical contacts, power electronics, and battery management systems. Samsung's solid-state technology increases that to 1,000 grams. That's a 20-fold increase in silver content per vehicle, a 643% jump in silver demand per car produced. This isn't incremental. This isn't a modest increase. This is a complete recalibration of automotive silver consumption. The math that breaks the market. Now let's run the numbers. Let's look at what happens when this technology scales to mass production. Global electric vehicle production in 2024 reached approximately 17.3 million units. The International Energy Agency projects over 20 million electric vehicles will be sold in 2025 alone. By 2030, EV volumes forecasts annual production will hit approximately 40 million electric vehicles globally. These aren't wild projections. These are conservative estimates based on current policy trajectories, manufacturing capacity, and consumer adoption trends. Samsung SDI has already established pilot production lines at its Suwon Research Center. The company sent battery samples to global automakers beginning in late 2024. The feedback has been overwhelmingly positive. Multiple automotive manufacturers are now integrating Samsung's solid-state batteries into their development roadmaps. Samsung has committed to mass commercial production beginning in 2027. That's 14 months away. This is happening. Right now. On schedule. So let's do the math. Let's be conservative. Let's assume that in the first year of mass production, 2027, Samsung captures just 5% of the global electric vehicle battery market. Just 5%. That's 1 million electric vehicles equipped with solid-state batteries containing 1 kilogram of silver each. 1 million kilograms of silver. That's approximately 32 million troy ounces of new annual demand from one technology, from one company, in year one. But here is where the analysis gets truly terrifying. Samsung isn't the only company developing silver-based solid-state batteries. Toyota has announced plans to begin solid-state battery production by 2027 to 2028, targeting 750 miles of range and 10-minute charging. QuantumScape, backed by Volkswagen and Bill Gates, is racing toward commercialization. Solid Power is working with BMW and Ford. The entire automotive industry has realized that solid-state batteries represent the future of electric vehicles. And the most promising solid-state architectures all require silver. Let's scale this conservatively. Assume that by 2030, just 20% of global electric vehicle production adopts solid-state battery technology. 20% of 40 million vehicles equals 8 million cars. 8 million cars times 1 kilogram of silver per vehicle equals 8 million kilograms. That's 257 million troy ounces of annual silver demand, just from solid-state electric vehicle batteries. That's 31% of current global mine production from one application in one industry. And we haven't even discussed what happens if adoption accelerates faster. What happens when solid-state batteries prove so superior? 600-mile range, 9-minute charging, 20-year lifespan, zero fire risk, that consumers refuse to buy electric vehicles with traditional lithium-ion batteries. What happens when automotive manufacturers realize that solid-state technology is not just better, it's so dramatically better that it makes conventional EV batteries obsolete? What happens when 20% adoption in 2030 becomes 50% adoption, or 70%? If 50% of 40 million electric vehicles use solid-state batteries, that's 643 million ounces of silver per year. Just for automotive batteries, that's 78% of current global mine production. And that assumes mine production can even maintain current levels, which is increasingly doubtful given ore grade depletion and the byproduct nature of 70% of silver supply. The supply crisis nobody is prepared for now. Let's talk about supply, because while demand is about to explode, supply is frozen, locked, immovable. Global silver mine production in 2024 was approximately 820 million ounces. That's less than 1% from 2023. The silver market has been in structural deficit for 5 consecutive years. The 2025 deficit is projected to exceed 117 million ounces. Demand already exceeds supply by 15% before Samsung's solid-state batteries hit mass production. And here is the critical point that Wall Street keeps missing. Silver is primarily a byproduct metal. Approximately 70% of global silver production comes from mining other metals: copper, zinc, lead, gold. When you mine those metals, you get silver whether you want it or not. But here's the problem. When copper prices are soft, copper mines slow production. When zinc operations face challenges, zinc output drops. And when that happens, silver supply falls regardless of how high silver prices climb. The price of silver alone doesn't determine silver supply. Primary silver mines, operations where silver is the main target, represent only about 28% of global output. This means that even if silver prices double to $120 per ounce, even if they triple to $180, supply cannot respond quickly. New mines take 7 to 10 years to develop. Existing operations are constrained by base metal economics. The silver market is fundamentally supply inelastic in the short to medium term, and short to medium term means the next 5 to 7 years. Exactly the time frame when Samsung's solid-state batteries will be scaling to mass production. According to the Silver Institute's latest data, global silver mine production peaked in 2016 at 900 million ounces. Since then, output has declined by an average of 1.4% per year due to reserve depletion, mine closures, and a 20% drop in average ore grades. 2025, production is expected to be 844 million ounces, still below the 2016 peak, even with silver prices up 113% year to date. Even with demand at record levels, the supply isn't coming. Now, add Samsung's solid-state batteries to this equation. Add 257 million ounces of new annual demand by 2030, and that's the conservative estimate. You're looking at total silver demand approaching 1.3 billion ounces against supply that can't break 900 million ounces. The deficit balloons to 30 to 40% of total supply. That's not a shortage, that's a crisis. That's a market that physically breaks. The strategic dimension nobody is discussing. And then there's the geopolitical angle, the strategic dimension that makes this even more explosive. In October 2025, the United States government officially designated silver as a critical mineral. Critical, strategic, essential to national security. Why? Because without silver, you cannot build the clean energy infrastructure required for energy independence. You cannot manufacture electric vehicles at scale. You cannot construct 5G networks. You cannot deploy artificial intelligence data centers that require massive silver content in server infrastructure. Silver is no longer just a precious metal. It's an energy metal, a technology metal, a national security metal, and governments are beginning to understand that dependency on silver imports represents a strategic vulnerability. China controls massive portions of global solar panel manufacturing. They understand silver's strategic importance. They're stockpiling, they're securing supply chains. The scramble for physical silver has already begun at the institutional level. Samsung is a South Korean company, but their solid-state batteries will be manufactured globally. Assembly plants are planned for Europe and Southeast Asia to serve automotive manufacturers in those regions. Every country that wants a domestic electric vehicle industry, which is essentially every major economy, will need access to silver, lots of silver, more silver than current market structures can provide. This creates a national security imperative to secure silver supply before production ramps. The perfect storm is already here. Let's zoom out and look at the convergence. On one side, you have Samsung confirming mass production of solid-state batteries by 2027. You have Toyota, QuantumScape, and Solid Power racing toward the same goal. You have automotive manufacturers committing to electric vehicle production targets that require hundreds of millions of battery packs. You have consumer demand for electric vehicles growing by 25% year over year in 2025. You have government mandates pushing electrification faster than market forces alone would deliver. On the other side, you have silver supply that can't grow. You have 5 consecutive years of structural deficits. You have exchange inventories plummeting. COMEX registered, silver is at critically low levels. Shanghai futures exchange warehouses are depleted. London vault delivery stress is spiking. Lease rates for physical silver have surged as borrowing costs reflect genuine shortage conditions. These aren't theoretical problems. These are real, observable market stress indicators happening right now. And Samsung's solid-state batteries haven't even hit mass production yet. This is what the market looks like before the demand tsunami arrives, before 257 million ounces of new annual consumption materializes, before automotive manufacturers start competing with solar panel producers, electronics manufacturers, 5G infrastructure buildouts, and traditional industrial users for a metal that simply doesn't have enough supply. The investment community is just beginning to wake up. Silver-backed ETF inflows reached approximately 187 million ounces in 2025, an 18% increase. But retail coin and bar demand actually fell to 5-year lows because prices rose so fast that Western investors thought silver was expensive at $30, at $40, at $50. Now it's at $62 and retail buyers are paralyzed. But institutional investors aren't paralyzed, they're accumulating. Bank of America raised its 12-month silver target to $65. Citigroup is forecasting potential targets of $95 to $100 within 12 to 24 months, based on sustained industrial demand and physical shortages. But here is what those forecasts don't fully capture. They don't capture Samsung's solid-state battery demand. They don't model the silver consumption from this single technology shift because most analysts still view it as too early, too uncertain, too speculative. They're wrong. The pilot lines are running. The samples are with automakers. The production timeline is set. 2027 is 14 months away. The inevitability of $100 silver. So let's connect the dots. Let's look at what happens over the next 24 to 36 months. Samsung begins mass production in 2027. First-year output is modest, perhaps 500,000 to 1 million battery packs. That's 16 to 32 million ounces of new demand, not market-breaking by itself, but enough to signal to every automotive executive, every battery manufacturer, every government planner that solid state is real, that it works, that it's superior, that it's the future. By 2028, production scales. Samsung aims for 10% market share, 2 million vehicles, 64 million ounces. Toyota enters mass production. QuantumScape begins deliveries. Solid Power ramps with BMW and Ford. Combined solid-state battery production hits 4 to 5 million vehicles, 130 to 160 million ounces of new annual demand. The silver deficit explodes from 117 million ounces to over 250 million ounces, 25% of total supply. By 2029, adoption accelerates. Solid-state batteries prove so superior that traditional lithium-ion becomes obsolete for premium vehicles. 10 million electric vehicles with solid-state technology. 320 million ounces. The deficit hits 400 million ounces, 35 to 40% of supply. Physical silver becomes genuinely scarce. Spot premiums spike. Industrial users face allocation. Governments invoke critical mineral authorities. And prices? At 117 million ounces deficit with industrial demand driving the shortage, silver hit $64. At 250 million ounces deficit, basic supply-demand mechanics suggest $120 to $150. At 400 million ounces deficit, with genuine physical scarcity and strategic hoarding, $200 becomes the floor, not the ceiling. But you don't have to wait until 2029 to profit from this. You don't have to wait for the full demand tsunami to arrive. Markets are forward-looking. They price in future scarcity today. When Samsung's first mass production solid-state batteries roll off the line in 2027 and automotive manufacturers start announcing adoption plans, the market will immediately reprice silver's value. When Toyota confirms production in 2028, when BMW announces solid power integration, when every major automaker commits to solid-state technology, the investment community will finally understand what's coming. The calculation becomes simple. 8 million electric vehicles with solid-state batteries by 2030. 257 million ounces of demand. Supply that can't grow beyond 900 million ounces. Total demand approaching 1.3 billion ounces. A 40% structural deficit that cannot be closed. That's not a bull case. That's mathematics. That's physics. That's the reality of a market where supply is inflexible and demand is about to go vertical. This is the starting line. So where does that leave us today? December 14th, 2025. Silver at $62 per ounce. All-time highs, record prices. And yet, if you understand what Samsung's solid-state battery technology means for silver demand, if you've done the math on what happens when 1 kilogram of silver per vehicle becomes the standard, if you comprehend the supply constraints that make rapid production growth impossible, then $62 isn't expensive. It's not a top. It's not even close to fair value given what's coming. The silver market is standing at the threshold of the largest demand shock in modern commodity history. Larger than the solar boom, larger than the electric vehicle transition that's already underway, larger than 5G infrastructure buildouts. This is a technology that requires 20 times more silver per vehicle than current electric cars. This is a technology entering mass production in 14 months. This is a technology that every major automaker will adopt, because it's not incrementally better, it's categorically superior. Now, Wall Street hasn't priced this in. Retail investors don't understand it yet. Most silver analysts are still focused on solar panels and traditional industrial demand. But the math is clear, the timeline is set. The production capacity is being built right now. Samsung SDI's pilot lines are operational. Toyota has committed to 2027 production. The automotive industry is shifting to solid-state architecture. And the silver supply? It can't respond. It won't respond. It's structurally incapable of responding quickly enough to meet the demand that's about to materialize. This isn't a prediction about what might happen. This is an observation about what is already happening. The only question is whether you understand it before the rest of the market does. $100 per ounce isn't a bull case. It's a mathematical inevitability. And $62 per ounce? That's the gift. That's the opportunity. That's the price you will look back on in 2027 and wonder how anyone could have missed what was so obvious. Samsung's solid-state battery didn't just improve electric vehicles, it broke the silver market. And the breakage is just beginning.